Hi everyone, welcome to The Framework. I am your host and heresy hunter, Jake Elliot. This is a three-part series on Casey City Church. This is now part 2, and I'll be interviewing the lovely Karen Alsop. So thanks for joining. Before we start, just a heads up. If you comment in the comments section, people will be able to see who is commenting. Keep that in mind if you attend Casey City Church. I'm here to protect victims, and not just victims of Casey City Church. If you attend any other church that I review or church that I review, your name and your comment will be there for all to see, and there's nothing I can do about that. So keep that in mind as you watch. Feel free to comment maybe after this live stream so that in the comment section below, you then have the power to then remove your comment or keep it there. So just want to say that before we start. I hope you enjoy this interview. It is starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hi everyone, I'm Jake Elliot from The Framework. The date is June 26, 2024. I've got the lovely Karen Alsop on this episode. This is a 3-part episode, as I said earlier. And this is episode 2, where we're going to be unpacking Karen Alsop's experience with Larry Sebastian at Casey City Church. For people who don't know who Karen is, she is an elder for life, according to the Constitution. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake. I the Constitution does say that we're elders for life, but we were very, very young elders, the first elders of Casey City Church. I'm not that old.
Okay. Glad we're sorting that one out. So apparently you joined Casey City Church in around 2004 and 2005. Can you tell us your story with Larry Sebastian and Casey City Church and help us provide some context of how everything has unfolded the way it has?
Yeah. Well, we were just in joining Casey City Church. We were wanting to run a program called Royal Rangers or Rangers. It's a camping ministry, and we were at a fantastic church, but we wanted to run this locally in the school that we both taught at. So my husband and myself, and so I was reaching out to pastors in the area, local pastors, see who wanted to partner with us, and I rang a couple, and they said no, they've got their programs, but I'd heard about Larry. I believe his kids started coming to the school that I was teaching at by then, and I'd heard about him, so I rang him and shared what we wanted to do, and he was super excited, and we went from there. So we started the program, we kind of partnered, and one thing led to another, and the church ended up meeting in my music classroom where I was teaching music, and the office was across in the other part of the portables, and everything was there. Everything, youth, Rangers, everything.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I was on the Church Watch Central timeline and there was information about schools and various things like that. You got to start somewhere. Most churches do start in schools by the looks of it. So what happened once you managed to get your hands on a property? Or can you explain the context and how you obtained the property?
Yeah. Larry really had a big vision, and that was one of the things that I think drew us to the church. It was exciting, we were in our 20s, and I'm an entrepreneur, I guess. I was running my own business, and he was sharing these big visions of making an impact in the community and maybe needing some sort of like hub to have different things in shops and businesses and everything all in the one space. And so I was really passionate about that, and we were looking around, and I saw this building on the corner of the main highway, and it had the for sale sign up, and it used to be a lighting shop, and it had a cross on the front too. And I just went back to the office and I kind of brought it up on the computer and I said to Larry, "Look, what do you think of this?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, well, yeah, maybe," but of course it was in the millions, and
Mm.
we had no money. But I don't know. We just he went,
Oh.
"Yep, let's see what we can do. I've got investors potentially that let's start talking," yeah, we went from
So what
there.
year was this?
This
What year was
was
this?
2009. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you kind of planted the seed. Am I right?
Yeah, a lot of I feel like so much of this is my fault. And I know
Oh,
people tell me not, but I was sold out, passionate, you know, supporter of all of this. I really was. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So you were probably given like those mantras like um greater is he who is in me and all those types of with God anything is possible kind of
hmm
stuff. So you had that open
hmm
vision, bright eye,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the kingdom of God is to be advanced and look at us go up. The only way is up. I guess
Gotta
you
have,
had that excitement.
yeah, yeah. Gotta have
Mm.
faith, and it was other things that came in. So we had a group of leaders at that time that were probably a little bit scared about this whole idea, but a lot of us young ones just like we were excited about it. But then there were prophecies as well. So our church often had prophets come in, certain ones, very often, certain ones, and yeah, there was one particular prophet that sat down with Larry in Glory Jeans and said, "You're going to sign 3 documents." And it was quite it was a lengthier prophecy than that, but that really made Larry sort of continue to say, "What right have we got to disobey God?" If a prophet or if different people come
Mm.
along, or if he's sensing that this is where God wants us to go, then that is what he literally would say to us all the time: is what right do I have to disobey God? What right do we have to disobey God? So we jumped into a pretty
Yeah.
crazy venture.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to unpack here. I've seen Phil Pringle prophesy of a Kong Hee to have that Suntex convention center, and that got into a lot of financial mishaps as well. And he probably would have had the same mindset with Pringle. Well, if he prophesied, I need to get it. And next thing you know, he got it, and Pringle's going, "Oh, look at that! The prophecy's being fulfilled." Was that kind of the thing that happened
Yeah.
when you got the building?
Yes. Yes. It, it, there because we were elders at the time as well. So my husband and I were elders with Larry and Krista, and because of it was always that we needed to support them and the vision. And I can't say that I questioned that whole thing because I wasn't. It was because faith was sort of being encouraged. It was have
Yeah.
faith, have faith, have faith.
Yes
And
and amen. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I can't say at that point in time that I was concerned, but I know that there were other leaders that were much older and wiser, probably should have been the elders, not us in our 20s, that brought about a whole lot of concerns, and they brought them to the table.
Okay. Due to the nature of my program, I will state that prophet that potentially prophesied over Larry Sebastian, that was Gary Morgan, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
The Australian
yeah,
Prophetic Council.
yeah. It
So
was.
people don't know, if people don't know, Australian Prophetic Council, that is overseen by Apostle Catherine Ruanala. I want to just make the point here, like we're dealing with apostles and prophets of the New Apostolic Reformation, really putting their noses in other people's business, whether the people realize it or not. And I'd say this is a very good example of a prophet coming in and potentially setting a very bad trajectory for Larry Sebastian and KCCT Church. On the topic of prophecies and visions,
Mm.
you talked about the Disneyland vision.
Yeah.
What about this other vision that we've been hearing about, the Star Trek
Yeah.
prophecy or vision?
I don't know whether I'd necessarily call that so much a vision, more of a well, it probably was, but
Prophecy?
Larry always, yeah, not a prophecy. It's just something that actually he said he wrote. It was one of the first things he drew. The Star Trek, the Enterprise. It was one of the first things he drew when he was envisioning the church. So it was a bit of an inspiration thing, I guess. And so it's like all these
Okay.
spokes going into that. So it's the same sort of thing as Disneyland. All the spokes going into this big central hub, this central point,
Okay.
and that is what he envisioned of the church, with everything on the outside feeding in. Yeah.
Because we've got the Disneyland vision, we've got the Star Trek vision, we've got Gary Morgan's prophecy. There's all the spokes coming in. There's our trajectory. Which was the number one vision or prophecy or um, thing that really motivated you and KCCD Church to go in Larry's direction? Like which was the prominent word or vision?
Uh, so for me, it was Larry sharing his excitement. So not so much Gary Morgan or other prophets. So for him, it was those prophecies, but for me, it was the Disneyland thing primarily. And I believe, he would have shared that a lot of times over the first sort of 10 years of the church. And once we were in City Edge, once we were in that building, I didn't hear it much. And I think a lot of the people in the second part of the church's history might not even know about it. So it was very much a
Okay.
big first decade thing.
So with all these talks on visions and prophecies, your experience, I'm sure, is fairly different to Kevin's journey. When did you first learn something was wrong, and how did you come to realize you had to do something about Larry's behavior? Big question.
Mm. Yeah, actually, we had some major challenges in around 2010, 11, 12, around when my daughter was conceived, born, when we were trying to exit the eldership. And there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of bullying from Larry. There was a lot of manipulation and a lot of control, and
Mm,
we were struggling, and I was particularly struggling back then. I didn't really know, I didn't know how to explain it. So I'd reached out to some people in the church, try to explain it, some of the other leaders, but I didn't understand. And then I reached out to a psychologist at that point, but I didn't know what to explain. How do you explain that you're being bullied and hurt and manipulated by your pastor, and that it's affecting your mental health? I really was afraid to even talk about it. We we just I started looking up some things. Like, I actually did realize that he was narcissistic. I mean, I was reading things that had all of the different things that a narcissist is, and particularly how it can show up as a pastor. And it was like, wow, it's everything. But yeah, I don't know what happened. We had our daughter. We wanted to stay at the church because we had friends, and we really loved the friendships that we had, and so we just pulled
mm,
back. We just protected ourselves, like put a wall up, and I didn't realize what that wall was. Um, I I think I just got really flat for a really long time. We had our two kids. We were still somewhat involved. I tried to put a bit more effort into my own business, into my own creativity, but I didn't really realize how deep all of that went, and that's something that I'm still processing now. So that period of time is really detrimental to my mental health, but it didn't kind of come up again. Like, it was almost like you're zapped. Is it like Men in Black when you get zapped and you forget? And it was like I forgot and I downplayed the problem as I distanced myself a bit from Larry. And so it didn't kind of rise up again until more recently when I kind of started facing it again. And that was early 2023. Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like he was really pushing you. And you mentioned that you're creative. So I'm guessing you were doing all like the creative advertising or the filming or the music or something like that. And he was just pushing you to your limits as well, because that's what a lot of these guys that I do review, they usually push their members. You got to pour yourself out like a love offering. Was
Yeah.
it that kind of experience where you were just pushed to your limits?
Yeah, but I know I'm someone that pushes myself to my limits as well. So
Uh,
I would give and give and give, and I wouldn't resent it. So I was there, but then it kind of came to that point where, as we're starting to want to have a family, that um, that I realized I needed to pull back a little bit, and I probably didn't even realize that fully until after our daughter was born. Um, when we um, when we got pregnant, um, we'd been serving in the church for about 7 years, and really just doing everything: eldership, running youth, running rangers, running kids church, running music, managing bands, running everything,
wow.
right? And still teaching. So I cut down on my teaching, and so we finally it was time to have a family, and I was 31 at the time, and I told Larry, um, this is hard to say, but I shared with Larry. He took me on a drive after we'd shared with him that we were pregnant, and he took me on a drive, and he's driving along saying, you know, Karen, I'm really quite disappointed that you're pregnant now because you can't really serve in the same way. We've just got the building, all this stuff's happening, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I just, I didn't even respond. I don't think I even responded, but
Oh, wow. Sorry, that's really emotional. Oh, I'm angry for you. That's so inappropriate.
yeah,
Oh, wow. Um, yeah. So you were still attending Casey City
yeah,
Church all this
yeah,
time, but just took more of a back seat, from my
yeah,
understanding.
yeah. It was after that we were able to get to remove ourselves from eldership. We were trying to, and it took a year for him to kind of let us off let us off that leash. And that was after our daughter was born. When our daughter was born, I was still so heavily involved. I was doing everything I could to clean up some really messy stuff. And it was just expected, like it's expected, and I expected it of myself as well. So I can't say I fully blame Larry for me choosing to do everything that I did.
Yeah.
But he is he's much older than me, not much, he's older, should be
Yeah.
wiser, and should be caring as a pastor,
Yeah.
for those in his care. Yeah.
And as a pastor, they should be coming to you going, "Hey, I'm noticing that you seem to be burning yourself out, or you've kind of pulled back, or you kind of are less connected to people in the church. Is everything all right?" You didn't get anything like that?
No, I
Interesting.
think it was because we did try to do this Matthew 18 thing with Larry and Krista, and we brought in a mediator because we knew that it would just not go very well if it was just the two of them. By the time we tried to do that, my daughter was about 6 months old, and a mediator, another pastor, came in, but it just got flipped back onto us. Like that whole conversation was pretty horrible, and he's
Mm.
kind of walked out the door. He might have said, "Oh, kind of sorry," but I know he doesn't mean he's sorry. He admitted that to all of the the
Oh,
leadership in meetings and in emails, that when he says sorry, he doesn't mean it. So for him to just walk out, and then we just didn't talk about it again after that. We wanted to revisit, but the mediator had a stroke, and I don't know what happened. And so I think Larry knew that. Like it was very weird for some time, I would say.
mm.
Yeah.
And so was that the first time when you were realizing there's something really wrong with Larry? Or when did
Yeah.
you realize?
Yeah. In that whole, like,
Mm.
2010, 2000. So when the building was purchased, I think that really, yeah, put all the pressure on everyone. So it showed up more. But now that I look back, like, I've been looking back so much, and learning from all of this, and seeing what happened to my friends that I didn't understand or didn't know about. But now that I hear the stories, it's like this has been going on for since the beginning. I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that question, but you just raised up other families. How did Larry treat families, individuals, or more vulnerable people at Casey City Church? And what were the results of how he treated them? If you can tell some stories without saying too much for anonymity's sake.
I mean, there's so many stories. Like, I don't even know where to start. There's hundreds of people that have come in and out of the doors of Casey City Church, and it's like they all have stories. The way that relationships have been destroyed, it pits people against each other, and often you pit husband and wife against each other. You know,
Yeah.
the control over, yeah, a young person that might have come in, that's come from a really rough background. So teenagers, we had quite a few young people that were just attending on their own without their families, and the control over them, the private meetings that he'd have with them, the look, it's disgusting. It's just
Mhm.
horrible. The sort of things that he'd ask them, and then the way that he would just control each person like a chess piece. I'm still coming to grips with the the destruction. Like, so many people that have not been able to go back to church. They've been de-churched, or they've turned away from God, because of him. I mean,
Unbelievable.
I don't want to.
Are we like talking about divorce and stuff like that as well? That
Oh,
actually taking place, or
yeah,
that's too
yeah,
much?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. It's
Okay.
just so, like, there's just, everyone's got a story, and he won't take responsibility for any of it. And I don't want this to be a some. It's hard to talk, because I always just continually think of his family and the people in his corner, and like how they might even be taking what I'm saying, because he he just keeps telling them that it's all lies, but it's not lies at all. There are so many people that have
Mm.
really wrecked. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. That's we'll move on for the sake of saying,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Another question is, when did you come to realize that you had to specifically do something regarding Larry? Because at some point, enough is enough. Because you were obviously realizing that this is some serious stuff that we're now dealing with, without going into details.
Yeah. 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 So in around March last year, in 2023, when I started realizing that there's some major issues, and it was prompted, I think, for a lot of us after the AGM, because a lot of people ask questions, and so financial questions certainly, but I realized that I'd been pushing this mental health issue down. And so I did speak to a psychologist at that point, and she had a whole lot more, Christian psychologist, and she suggested I might have complex PTSD. And I sort of took that on and thought, yeah, yep, I believe I do. I kind of started then sharing with a few other members of the church just privately, and hours and hours of tears and crying and just realizing what we'd been a part of and what we'd missed. And so, yeah, that period of time, then we had to work out what we would do. And I knew at that point I can't just walk away. You know, I can't. I've been there for nearly 20 years. I can't just walk away and not say anything. But I understand people that have had to do that, like they've saved themselves. But I am responsible for the people that were in my care over so many years. Can't walk away, but I didn't know who to talk to. I knew that Kevin, as the executive pastor, had been trained to be an armor bearer, and that he would likely go back and talk to Larry and Krista if we shared with him, because that's what we were trained to do, and that's what we would have done. And it wouldn't have been in any, like, we just didn't. We just knew we had to talk to him and take that risk. And if at that point, then we've said what we had to say, we can walk away. But he didn't. He didn't tell them. He gave us that open forum to speak confidentially, and I guess after that, one thing led to another. He knew what he needed to do, and we stood behind him for some time, like hiding. We were all hiding behind him. He was taking the stand, but at some point, maybe a few weeks in, I just knew I had to come forward and be part of the advocacy and stand strong for people, because responsibility. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Karen, so much for being a voice for victims, because when you deal with bullies, the intimidation, the games, and not even say gaslighting, can be terrifying. And he's got the pulpit, they've got the mic, they can say whatever they want. And listening to some of the sermons, there's a few things he has been saying. That one I just put out yesterday, where he's just talking about the Holy Spirit telling you in the morning when a leader calls up and going, "I was at the Holy Spirit. No, I want to go, but the Holy Spirit's obviously alive and you're not yet because you're still waking up." Thinking, does that mean that leaders are literally contacting members in the morning saying you got to do something for God? Was I mishearing that? Was that what he was kind of
I think
pushing, this
that,
idea that you need to be ready?
kind of like he would certainly ring people at any time and expect them to answer or text him back straight away. But I think he was just actually talking about us being at church in the morning and having not quite woken up when he asked us to do something as well.
For those who aren't familiar with Kevin Manning, I just did my interview with him. That is in part 1. This is part 2. So I encourage you to check out part 1, because he did a fantastic job going into the details of some of the issues that he experienced with Larry. So it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to do what he did. So thank you for sharing that, Karen. But Kevin also talked about his experience with MFI. And if people don't know what MFI is, it's Ministers Fellowship International, and Frank Damasio is the apostle of that organization. Apostle. That's a very important word for you all. So Karen, did you have any experiences with MFI, or mainly with Johnny Scroggins? I can already think that you didn't, but I'm sure the ramifications of his interference was felt. And did he contact you, or as an ex-elder, or did he contact or try to understand the victims like yourself in any of this?
Never. And he knew that myself and my husband were also advocates throughout this whole piece.
Oh, wow.
We wanted to talk to them, to whoever was involved in it. We wanted to, and we kept reaching out. The the first year, this has been going on for so long. It's over a year now, but we're hearing victim stories. We're going to police. We're mandatory reporting. We're trying to figure out what had happened. We're hearing more and more stories. So I'm hearing stories from people that I loved that kind of disappeared because they were afraid. They don't want to interact with people from Casey City Church anymore, and then they come back into my world ready to share what happened. And like, so I'm just hearing all these stories, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And we just wanted to advocate for these people. We wanted the people that we're dealing with it, including Johnny Scroggins, to do something to help. One of the biggest cries we had from the very start was counselling. Everyone that's affected needs to be able to have counselling now. And we kept asking and asking for it, just knowing there are people on the edge, that have just spoken up. So Johnny has never spoken to me. When he came in and reseated Larry, and we just found out like a couple of days before, as Kevin kind of let us all know that was happening. We didn't know what to do, but we knew we couldn't be there in the church when he does that. I mean, I was having panic attacks about Larry, and so there's no way I'm going back into the church after I've spoken. But for Johnny to go in there and to speak, and so we wanted to make sure we knew what he was saying. He wanted to live stream to us, so the live stream came into where we were all gathered. So we gathered a whole lot of people that had left, so that we could be together. And what he said from the front was just, he might want to go and twist it and say he wasn't talking about us, but he called us Judases. He labelled us as Judases. He said things like, if I have 10 people in the church, then I'm going to have one Judas. If I have 20 people in the church, then I'm going to have two Judases. We're all sitting there watching it from a house, just watching, having all shared the trauma and hoping that MFI and people could come in and help. And he's profiling Larry, gets him back up on the keyboard to play at the end of that. And I don't know. It was just devastating for everyone.
Dang.
It was devastating.
I'm going to ask a hard question now. You don't have to answer it, but what does it feel like to be a Judas?
I mean, when we knew we were doing the right thing, speaking up, but to be called that, to be labelled that, this is the labels have just continued to come as we've spoken up. I think in Christian circles, to talk about a leader or to bring someone to account that is a spiritual authority is just looked at as it's looked at as evil. It's looked at as creating conflict. It's looked at as gossiping. It's looked at as doing the wrong thing. And we've had to just to know that we're doing this for the victims out there, the survivors, and for people beyond our church, beyond Casey City Church. We have to speak up because this is it's a pandemic of just horrid behaviour from people within the church.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm going off script a bit as well, but I think it's a great question to ask. You were in an eldership position with your husband and a few others. How much do leaders or elders gossip? Because a lot of these people kind of go, everyone else is gossiping, but how much do the leaders actually gossip so that people can realize, wow, actually, I thought I was a gossip or saying very little. Would you be prepared to disclose that information? Because that helps people see a lot more clearly, if you can.
Larry would share things all the time from what he'd heard from other people or what he'd been privately told. Nothing was off limits, and the way that he'd share it would be like he's doing it because he's the pastor, and he might need to bounce it off someone. He'll come into the office and just start reading an email out from someone that's confidential. He'll come in like just all the time. So he would always preach this vicarious anger thing. A goes to B goes to C has a problem with A, and then C, and then B apologizes to A, and then C doesn't realize and still has. I think he probably preached that about twice a year, every year. But that is exactly what he was doing to everyone else.
Wow.
So we can't go, as church members, we can't talk about others or him or anyone. So there was this veil of silence over all of us. It's why this went on for so long, because we couldn't speak. We can't say what we needed
Yep.
to say.
Yeah, exactly. And you're thinking that when someone leaves, they're just potentially just finding another church down the road or going
Yeah,
somewhere else,
well,
maybe.
yeah, he would
And
ring
then you
up
realize,
people.
yeah.
If someone left the church and he had a problem with them, then he'd ring their pastors. He would
Mhm.
tell their pastors how bad these people were. I mean, he'd ring people or he'd talk to
Mhm.
people behind their back.
Yep. That's a very, very, very common story in places like Hillsong and C3 as well. You're not alone there. And if you're listening to this, take note. That's what they do. And it's very hard to find a good church without potentially someone ringing them up and going, oh, by the way, yeah, it's a very sad experience.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, what were the after effects of Johnny Scroggins? Um,
yeah.
um, apart from being called a Judas, like what there are always after effects of this. What were
Mm, mm.
people's
Well,
reactions? Did it shrink? Did it grow as a church?
Johnny stayed part of the process for quite some time. So I won't go into that in this time, but he was very much a part of the decision making process at the start. With Larry, he was Larry's friend, so we just felt really unheard, very scared of the truth being just completely ignored because Johnny was friends with Larry, and he just didn't want to hear from any of us. So it was all of us just had to band together. So we had a lot of the ones that left, we came together and just started processing together. So we'd meet together every couple of weeks and work through a book called A Church Called Tove by Scott McKnight. Excellent book, excellent book. But that is, I think, one of the things that saved us all in a way, that we were able to process together. So no longer kind of silent, not able to talk, but now able to share and to understand each other at the very least. So even though we weren't being heard within those church walls and by Johnny Scroggins and everyone else, we were being heard by each other. So
Wow. Thanks for
yeah,
that. Yeah. Well, I don't know what authority Johnny Scroggins had to do that. I
we
don't
didn't.
know what it is, but I'm so sorry that you all went through that. It's horrible having to try and piece your lives together with other people because there's at least there's humility and uh appreciation that we're all in this together, I guess.
Yeah,
So there was healing going, hey, it's not just me, it's other people as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, thanks for telling me thanks for that.
Mm.
Next question. Since advocating for victims, how has Casey City Church treated you and Larry Sebastian?
Very badly. We really have been exiled, and I know in an earlier newspaper article, Larry said, "No, we're not exiled. Yes, we are exiled." Not that we'd want to walk back into the church building, but we do care for the people there. We really, like, I'm personally really worried about those that are under Larry's influence still, because I know what it was like to be under his influence. Now, I haven't gone through the last year. I can only imagine what's going on there. But when we've had to turn up for certain things, so for the AGM and for a reconciliation meeting that was horrible, look, I'll explain that one. So in September, there was this idea that we could all come together and that Larry could apologise, and they wanted Kevin to apologise for, doing what he did, which is stand up for the victims. But anyway, they wanted that to happen, the people that were dealing with it. And so we bravely went into the church, and that's the first time I'd seen Larry since all of this. As I said before, I was having panic attacks just walking out the front of my house because he drives past every day. I'm not scared of him anymore, but I was just really scared that he'd knock on my door. So to turn up to the church building for this meeting was hard for all of us, but we did it. So we're sitting there in the pews and hearing the chairperson speak from the front, trying to bring some form of reconciliation, and then Larry gets up and he starts giving his apology speech, which just sounded so AI. It was not him. I know Larry, I know the way he speaks, and it was not him. And he was reading it, and I was crying, and there's victims there just sitting there looking at him, and he's just reading it, looking at his family every now and again, and not acknowledging the people there that he's hurt at all. And then, so what happened then was it just got really upsetting with what was being said from the front. I just stood up. Oh no, before that, someone else stood up, a previous member, and really tried to advocate for everyone there. She was getting told, "You're not a member," because she hadn't been for a long time. So the people in the church that was still there were saying, "No, you're not a member. You have no right to speak." So I stood up and I said, "Well, I am. I've been here for 18 years and I need to speak." And then I wanted to show, I'd made a video. Now this video hasn't gone out into the world at all, but I made it so that it advocated for the victims. The victims were very brave. They spoke, they shared in this. So I got up on the live stream desk and I was just a mess, and I couldn't even press play because I didn't know where the play button was. And by that time, they'd all kind of just, they're all looking at me, so angry. And I'm saying to them, "This is for you, like for the family members that are sitting there." They were so angry at me. Some of my best friends who were just, I've never seen anything like it. I said, "It's for you. They're all as trapped as anyone else."
So you didn't play it in the end?
No, it didn't get played. I did, and then the chairperson said, "No, well, that's probably not the place." And I said, "Well, Larry and Krista,
Wow.
will you let me play it?" And they didn't respond. And I said, "Can you stay back afterwards and watch it? The family members, stay back afterwards and watch it when everyone's gone." No, they didn't want to hear. That was the worst meeting I've ever been in my life.
Wow. And what time was that? Was that on a weekday, Sunday?
It was a Wednesday night in September. It
So
was after
the middle
that
of the
that
week, everyone's a bit tired.
Yeah.
Make it
was
worse.
horrid. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for sharing that. So you're tough. The fact that you're still dealing with this after all this time is amazing. Can you share what keeps you going despite the challenges and obstacles you face?
I think God's just given me a really big dose of empathy, and I hadn't realized how much, maybe, until now. But I just, it's for the people, and these people. Friendships have always been so important to me, and I don't think I've ever lost any friendships, but I've lost friendships in the last year because we've stood up. Some of those make sense, some don't, but it's, I can't, I know Kevin was sharing about the scales and not tipping the scales when it comes to the family, and it's the same thing with, I can't tip the scales and go, well, I want to keep this friendship. So if I'm silent over here and I don't stand up for these people over here, then I can keep this friendship. No, if these friendships depend on my silence, then I can't keep going with it. I have to advocate for these victims that have been silenced. And as I said before, I'm responsible. Not that I saw it, but I was there at those times, and I supported him, and I excused him. I excused his behaviour. I kept my friends at the church because I'd talk them back into it when they were ready to leave, to say, he really does care about you. But no, he doesn't. I'm responsible.
And it does feel terrible having to say that about someone you know quite well, like Larry. You can't believe you're saying this. Thinking, I'm saying this again. Do I have to keep saying this about someone who I worked with and know very well?
Well, I have to say this. I was good friends with Larry. So it might look like I'm coming out and just firing. But there are a lot of people that were good friends with Larry that aren't now, that he's hurt, cut off. So many, right? But I can't accept that behaviour, and it just makes no sense to me, right? It makes no sense to me that he can't apologise for real, that he can't repent, that he can't stand down, that he continues to stay there.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense, but yeah.
Wow. I think I missed this question. What initially motivated you to become an advocate for victims of abuse within the church?
Oh, it was just, I think maybe I started talking about that, but when Kevin heard us and then he knew what he had to do, he knew he had to stand. We knew we had to stand too. So it was that turning point of, okay, if Kevin goes back to Larry and Krista, and we'll just have to leave. But it was like, okay, someone's standing up. We need to stand with him. So it was that point. In the past, people have tried to bring Larry to account. There was a massive eldership spill in 2013, massive. It was a mess. Half the church left, but he cannot be brought to account. He cannot be. And I even had a little bit of faith at the point where Kevin was going to ask Larry to resign on May the 3rd, that maybe, just maybe, Larry would say yes, that they'd both go, okay, yes, we need to do that. We need to do the right thing. That was just such false hope. Like, now I look back and wonder how I ever even thought that would be possible. But we all have, and we look at things from the way that we process and the way that we handle things, and we can't, So we just knew that we had to keep going and keep going. We can't let this go on. This is still hurting people. It's not, there's still people hurting. So, yeah.
Yeah. We essentially, as Christians, want to see Larry bear fruit in keeping with repentance. That's it, really. You want to see that genuine conviction of going, actually, I'm really sorry. What can I do?
Yeah.
Ministry of reconciliation.
Yeah.
Thanks for being an advocate for the victims. It takes a lot of guts, folks. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice. So again, thank you so much for standing up and being a voice for the voiceless. Oh, we're nearly done. How do you emotionally cope with hearing such traumatic and painful stories? Because how do you carry it? There are some shocking stories.
There are, it's been the hardest period of my life ever. But I carry it because I know God's carrying me. Jesus is carrying me. And I get a question a lot from well-meaning people, saying, you just need to look after yourself. You just need to you need to be strong yourself. You can't carry all of this. You need to and then there's the whole, you need to let
Like,
Jesus carry
no,
it,
God.
right? Let
Yeah.
God carry it. But he needs me to carry it. That's a gift that he's given me. And as hard as it is, there's one thing I realized recently is that because I don't actually have any major traumas from my past, from my growing up years. I had an amazing life, amazing family, amazing parents, no major traumas. So when I'm hearing other people's stories, I'm not connecting them with my own traumas. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's why I'm able to carry it that little bit more, because it's huge, and it just keeps going. The stories that come
Mm.
out, they just keep coming. They haven't stopped. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting. This is off script again. MFI was talking about how one of their policies is my brother's keeper, like how they're really in that vein. But I'm seeing Kevin Manning and yourself be more of a brother's keeper than any of those guys that like these types of positions. So again, thank you for taking on, I would say, an eldership like role. So yeah, next question we got here is how have these challenges affected your personal and professional life?
Yeah. You can see I'm in a studio right now, and I haven't been able to create anything really since this all started. I haven't been able to work. And at the start of this, I don't know, like I'm someone that's normally really driven and really productive and really creative, for those that know me. And I just realized that this was going to be something where I just had to take a step back from my world of story art and everything that I did in the photography world, to focus in on the healing, to focus in on the helping and to the advocating. I didn't realize it would go on for this long. So I'm still in a place where I'm not quite ready to go back to it, but I feel like maybe finally there's a little bit of a turning point. But I've just turned to writing, and I've been writing all about the last 20 years and my place in it, and then working with other victims and them writing their stories. And so that for me has been very healing, and it's been part of my journey. But yeah, like the last year's turned our world around and over, in our families, and just we haven't been able to function properly at all. But I don't regret that. I know that God placed me in this to do what
Mm.
he needs done, and so I'm up for that.
A
Yeah.
terrible, beautiful burden indeed. Yeah. So two more questions. Let's end on a high note, shall we? What do you think needs to change within the church?
Change within the church. Well, one of the biggest things that I've seen from this is that the church has no idea. Like generally, I'm not talking KCC Church. I'm talking churches everywhere. Have no idea how deep this abusive system can run and how it affects people. So when people that have left churches because of being hurt go to another church, they really just get told, just move on. Don't. It's just conflict. Just forgive. Just forget. And that is just so damaging. And most people don't return because of that. So there's a huge hole in recovery ministry and the ability for churches to understand this kind of abuses. And so what needs to change is an understanding of that, an understanding of how even doctrine has given abusers extra abilities. So doctrine on spiritual authority and honoring the spiritual authority and not questioning and all of those things give abusers a platform to continue to abuse without accountability. And it's just there's so much that needs to be.
Last question, and I want to end on a positive note. Can you share a success story where your efforts significantly helped a victim?
Yeah. There are victims that, have had to go to the police, have had to report various things, and that again, it's the unsilencing. They've been able to now speak. The girl that has been in some of those newspaper articles, she's gone from being completely silenced by Larry, and just trying to figure everything out herself, and just really quite challenging mental health issues, to be able to speak, which has empowered her, and for her to have people around her, so lots of people around her that understand, that love her, that are supporting her. So it's the support that we've all been able to give each other, which is quite incredible, I think. I know a lot of people leave churches like this silently, quietly, but there's a community that cares about each other.
Oh, thanks for that. Any last words? Anything you want to say to Larry in this live stream, or the family, or the victims?
I don't know that I can talk to Larry. I think I've tried. That's just too hard right now. But to the family members, you guys know that we love you. You know what we've had to do. You know that we had to do this. And yeah, I don't know, to those still in the church that are thinking that all of this is a lie, please, please, please hear what's being said, take it in, and just open your eyes and look. Listen to what's being said in there. Listen to what the narrative is, and pray about what the truth is, because the truth is there for you to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the truth is this as well. We love Larry Sebastian and his family and KCCD Church. I know people might think, Jake, really? You're pretty harsh in your live streams. But at the end of the day, we are the body of Christ, and we want to see people healed, reconciled. That's the Christian message. And if I ever sat down with Larry, I would love to share the gospel with him, because at the end of the day, if his heart cannot see all the pain is caused, then the only gospel cure, so the only cure is the gospel. So thank you so much, Karen, for coming on, sharing your heart, sharing your story, sharing your experiences, providing all this information. I really hope this is a fantastic resource for so many people to pass on to their friends and families and broiled at KCCD Church. This isn't fun, but it needs to be done. And I can't thank you enough, you and Kevin, for coming on and sharing what you've shared today. Guys, it's the end of the interview. And yeah, leave a comment if you feel brave enough to do so. Share, subscribe. There's a lot's been unpacked.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much for caring enough to speak, and we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.